purchases are. So
wait, why?
Yeah,
what are you
no,
buying?
I want to know the weirdest thing Vitalik's ever bought with crypto.
metformin probably.
All right.
Yeah, it's in one of those anti-aging things that the longevity community is really into. Yeah.
Wait, does it work? Surely I would have heard about it.
Some studies show that it works.
Some of my friends did this weird thing in like where did they go? Somewhere in like South America. There was like this place you go do anti-aging stem cell replacement stuff.
Right. Yeah, I have no idea how effective that stuff is.
How old do you think like someone born today could live?
I would say, actually, more than 50% chance someone born today will see the year 3000.
What?
Wait, more than 50% chance someone born today will virtually be immortal?
Are you planning to be immortal?
I'd say under 75, more than 50. Yeah. Definitely hope so.
Wait, what? This is a good question, because like on Twitter the other day you joined a conversation about the social inequality between men and women, and how when women have children their earning potential drops significantly on average. And you brought up the idea that a synthetic womb might be able to balance out this inequality between men and women. And there was sort of a controversy on Twitter that I can summarize as being tech billionaires think up the most Black Mirror-esque tech solutions to social issues and then expect people to sort of accept them. But Black Mirror-esque is just, you paint innovation and like biotech in a very scary light in a TV show to make everyone go, holy shit, that sounds bad. But on the same hand, on the other hand, you might see synthetic wombs as being an option for people who can't carry children for medical issues or whatever, and they might provide a reprieve from reality for those people. And immortality being available, with a 50 to 75% chance of being possible in the next 100 years, might also be painted in a similar way as like this Black Mirror-esque tech prediction. So how do you see the future in 100 or 500 years or so as biotech and immortality become things that are no longer science fiction? And do you think there is actually a solution to inequality here, or do you just think all the rich people are immortal and poor people die at age 100?
I mean, on the inequality issue, I would actually expect that these technologies are going to become available to everyone fairly soon, like possibly one or 2 decade lag, right? Like that's very realistic. Like, but not that far in the grand scheme of things after they start becoming available to a few people. And I think the thing to look at there is like most technologies follow that trajectory, right? Like today, like many of the people listening to this podcast are using the same phone, type of phone as Elon Musk. And that the kinds of things that don't follow that rule right now are the things that involve like very intensive human labor, right? And so like healthcare does involve a lot of human labor, education involves a lot of human labor. And then the other thing aside from human labor is like things that are inherently scarce, like prime real estate would be one good example. So like with these new technologies, like there's no, like if you are saying that like keeping someone alive is going to be only available to billionaires, so it's only going to cost $5 million a year forever, then you're basically saying that there's going to be a technology for keeping one person alive forever that requires like basically 100 full-time people managing each single person. And like to me that just seems intuitively impossible, right? Like that's like that does seem like the sort of thing that could happen for a while like what's really happening is the research is being worked out. But like as a kind of like as a long-term thing, like where do we ever see like those, I guess, ratios of human labor for like where do we see needing 100 people to maintain something about something around like one person or even one animal. So that's my kind of very big scale thesis for why I do think that the it's not going to be that bad long term. I mean, short term, obviously, there are problems. I mean, short term, even with COVID vaccines, there's like a lot of these inequities, and there's some countries have boosters, and other countries still don't have their first doses given out to more than a few people, which is definitely a big problem. But like realistically, even if rich countries don't get nicer, that problem is going to get solved over time, because people will just come up with like better and cheaper vaccines, and there's people working on that stuff already. So that's my take on why I think radical medical technology is not going to create a kind of rich versus poor kind of disaster. I do think that governments can help. Like I do think that once this stuff gets big enough, it should be part of the standard package of any any country that offers universal healthcare, right? Like that just so I do think that things can be better or can be worse, and there are things where it can be better. And then the other risk is that I feel like a lot of people do have this kind of intuitive like feeling that this is going to be something that just gets kind of like forced on the population by some kind of evil government, when like the reality is that I think it is going to be it is going to be very voluntary, and it'll possibly even stay voluntary almost even just forever, right? Look at how hard it is even to just get COVID vaccines mandated right now. I mean, like I personally think there's even a really strong case for just saying no to all of the COVID vaccine stuff, right? Or sorry, not the vaccines themselves; they're excellent. I mean, the saying no to mandates, just because of the precedent-setting grounds, right? Of that we are going to have this amazing radical biotechnology, and if we want people to be willing to accept it and see the benefits, then we just have to credibly convince people that like consent is where we draw the line. And are we willing to pay costs today to draw the line of consent? Yes, right. So, if our kind of civilization can be clearer on that, that is something that I am super in favor of. Super in favor of consent being where we draw the line. Super in favor of doing the work to try hard to make it more accessible to everyone in the world. Like I think costs will go down because costs do go down, but it can happen slower and it can happen faster. And the more kind of active effort to making it happen faster, the better. And then the other thing, I guess the other thing is that there are good critiques in a lot of this stuff in terms of like, hey, isn't this like technology of like doing very kind of radically transformative things to the human body? Like, isn't that just risky? I do think that like we have precedents of people feeling that way, right? Like people felt that way before about IVF. People felt that way before about organ transplants, and today, both of those are kind of fine. But like the way this all works in reality, right, is that at first it's very experimental, but it's life-saving, right? And so if you're otherwise going to die, like if I was going to die, right, then, and I had the opportunity to take a medicine that was crazy and had a 5% chance of killing me or totally screwing me up, like, yes, I would still do it, right? And I feel like, everyone is ethically kind of agrees that if the alternative is people dying, then, sure, you do it. And that's who the first users are, right? It's the users where it's just obviously a really good thing for them, because otherwise there's just like, they have no choice at all. And like a human life is going to be dead. And then from there, the technology matures over time and people become more comfortable with it for more and more use cases. And it eventually just kind of slowly becomes its way in modern society, right? So like, I guess I do think that people do kind of get there are people who have this kind of instinct that, hey, this is stuff that's going to be just like pushed on everyone by a government, and we're going to be living in some like kind of Brave New World matrix in 40 years. But I think, like as I said, like just given like even just looking at how like how hard COVID stuff has been. I think the world is not a world that is kind of like basically there's already a huge amount in my opinion sometimes even too much caution. Like I personally think that COVID vaccines should have been available to people as a choice even in the summer of 2020. Like I think the risk benefit was already probably at the point where it would have like offering it to people who wanted it would have been a good idea even then. So like I personally think there's even reasons to believe that like society's too conservative on some things, but like things always happen like this naturally. But at the same time, like saying that like yes, if we create anything that's good, we will make active efforts to make sure that it's available to everyone and not just a few people. Strong yes for me on that, and drawing a hard line on consent, and even being willing to like be very I guess conservative with mandating things even today just to set the precedent. I think is totally reasonable as well. But so I think those two are very important caveats, right? I think to make a lot of people more comfortable. And then also the other thing is like there's no single technology is going to solve every problem, right? And I think sometimes there is this bias where people like there is a possible new technology and then it gets interpreted as saying like, oh, like this is going to solve everything, and then there's pushback of like, no, it's obviously not going to solve everything and there's all these other problems. But like a lot of the time the people who originally like argued in favor of that technology, they never actually said that it's going to solve everything, right? Like they just said like, hey, it's a small it's a piece, and maybe it's a big piece, maybe it's a small piece. So with like there was like probably the best point made on the synthetic womb stuff is that obviously like pregnancy is not the only thing that's hard. Actually raising a children is hard. And like I'm super in favor of having better like household robots so that people don't have to just like do chores at home anymore. Like I think we need that too, right? It's not a or it's not an or, like it's and with even with life extension, there's this question of like which is like the if people start to live to being 500 years old, then like eventually there's going to be issues with like the brain and like and psychology, and like humans aren't evolved to live to be like have 5 centuries worth of memories and experiences inside of us, which is like a fair critique. But like not every technology has to solve every problem, right? Like it will just be like, first, let's get to the part where, people can enjoy having big, happy families, and, the great-great-grandfather can kind of huddle around with their 38 great-great-grandchildren and tell stories to them about how they used to have these crazy assets like Shiba Inu and XRP, and people used to buy them. Okay, actually, that was. I actually don't want to be mean to Shiba Inu. And then okay, fine. We get to there, and like I think like 200-year-olds having like great people being able to live to 200 and being able to sit around a kind of like a virtual fireplace and tell stories about XRP to their 38 great-great-grandchildren is great. And then yes, there will be other problems, but that's like for future technology to solve, right? We're a civilization. It's not like we're like shooting the rocket to Alpha Centauri now, and once it leaves Earth orbit, we can't influence it anymore.
Kobe, this makes me really nervous about Vitalik's timeline for ETH 2.0 deployment.
Infinite time.
So the great grandchildren will be like, when is proof of stake coming out finally? Like, are we is 38 that's enough? Do we need 39? Yeah, we got plenty of time. ETH 2.0 in the year 3000. It'll be amazing, and we're all going to be alive to see it. Let's do it.
Right,
Block me
in.
Oh god. That means I'll be poor in the year 3000. I'm screwed. I can't even afford the free healthcare upgrade. So does this mean that you by default believe in a multiplanetary world too? Because in a world where nobody dies, population just increases forever outside of accident and murder.
I guess what do I think? Sorry, my mind went blank. What was the question again?
Do you believe in multiplanetary? Because if no one dies
yes,
anymore,
multiplanetary. Yeah. This is right. I think this was the other critique, right, which of life extension that gets raised up, which is like, what, population goes up to 50 billion. Would that not wreck the environment? I think people often get like really caught up on the word economic growth, and like the thing that like the popular imagination meaning of the term and the economist meaning of the term are kind of different, right? In that if we start living in like, okay, so I guess the actual reality, right, is that the amount of physical resources and the measurable impact on the environment people in wealthy countries have been having has been decreasing for decades, even while GDP has been going up, right? So what does GDP going up mean? Like, it's a measurement reflecting the facts that we now know how to basically provide more value to human beings' lives with less physical matter going in. If you look at smog in cities like London in 1952, it is just like crazy, right? Like all of the stuff that you see out of like Beijing 5 years ago, or like cities in India today, like Western cities were like that, but even worse, 60 or 70 years ago. But then over time, we actually improved on that. Even contributions to global warming is kind of increasingly flatlining, and solar might well end up actually like really fixing that problem. In terms of like physical space in the world, it's like the math is right now there's a little under 8 billion people, say 7.5 billion, divided by 150 million square kilometers, so about 50 people per square kilometer. Like, that's actually not too much, right? So if one of the ways to do this analogy is that if the entire world had the population density of like, let's say the half of China that has that has 99% of the people, right? So that's I think about 4.5 million square kilometers for about 1.35 billion. So if you scale that up, then by a factor of I guess 100 over 3, then like that's what a 50 billion person planet would look like, right? So like it's in terms of physical space, we know what it looks like. Like, there's still plenty of space for people. It's and then of course, hopefully we're going to legalize multi-story buildings in the US at some point, and I think we'll actually be fine. And then eventually the Mars thing, I guess it's interesting because in the short and medium term, I think the attraction to Mars is going to be a lot of this kind of like very sort of ideological kind of pioneer values, right? Like people who just really want to strike out somewhere new. People who wants to be very far from any Earth government possibly could get into the Mars thing. I mean, I think like they'll get into the metaverse first, but the Mars thing later. That's eventually maybe more and more. I do think that realistically, it's like it'll take some time before Mars gets a substantial population, because like one way to look at it is compare Mars to Antarctica, right? Antarctica is like transportation costs, logistically, everything is like way more friendly to humans building cities there than Mars is. But we don't have cities in Antarctica yet. So like if you're to talk about populating Mars, like you have to ask like, well, why haven't we done Antarctica first? And we part of the answer is that like there just isn't demand yet. But I do think basically, we'll figure it out, and things are going to be fine. The humanity of 100 years from now is going to be, I think, as different from us as the difference between us and the humanity of 1920. 1920 was back when airplanes were, I think, about roughly where spacecraft are today, right? And you had the tiny little biplanes going like and we had World War I, and that ended up being not very fun for its participants. But Yeah, no, actually, World War One was like interesting, right? Because like people went in like basically having this kind of like post medieval mindset of like cavalry and bayonets and all of these things, and then they came out of like being very similar to what we would call recognizably modern warfare, and all of this change happened in like 3 or 4 years. I feel like our culture did not even have a reference point for this sort of thing maybe until COVID, because like with COVID, right, like we actually saw like lots of things got digitized very quickly. Lots of political changes happened very quickly, and like I do think that the 1914 to 18 transition was probably even more severe, but the kind of the rapid digitization I think is like in some ways an analog of that. Like in some ways, like this is the start of the 21st century. And so if you ask yourself like how is 2021 different from 1921, and then like take that as a reference point for how like different 2121 will be from 2021. Like humanity is going to be a really powerful civilization. Like we're going to have so much amazing, cool technology and stuff with which we're going to figure all of this stuff out. So I'm looking forward to it.
You're obviously very passionate about like social change and large scale human coordination and political issues.